Welcome to the first ever NFCA webinar presented by Rapsodo. We hope you enjoy the content.
A little bit of housekeeping before we get going. I'm going to explain the schedule a little bit to just make sure that we know exactly how this is going to float. There is a group chat feature, and we really encourage messages and questions to come in that way. So if you have questions for Coach, if you have questions for Paige, or questions for the folks here at Rapsodo, please send them in. We'd love to hear from you throughout this talk, and we will hopefully have time to get to everybody. If not, we're going to do our best to follow up and then get back in contact with all of you to make sure all your questions are answered. We're going to go through a brief Rapsodo presentation, just highlighting some of the data so that all the background info about what the tech is, how it works, and then the data points that we get from it are going to be covered, and we can kind of have that as a basis for the topics that we're going to go over with Coach and Paige today before we get into their presentation. Promise it won't be long. I know that the real reason we're here is to learn and hear from these great women in the industry. So before I get started, Sydney, I know that you had something you wanted to say before we get into the presentation.
Yeah, hi, my name is Sydney, but thank you, Seth. And then I would also like to say thank you to Missy and Paige and to NFCA. And I would actually like to say thank you to everyone that is joining us today. We're really excited to be part of the first of hopefully many webinars with NFCA. Rapsodo is still relatively new to the softball community, and we've been overwhelmed by the support we've already received from y'all. As a former college softball player, it's incredible to see this piece of technology help girls of all levels achieve their full potential. And honestly, my favorite part of working with Rapsodo is going out to do demos, meeting with teams, and just seeing the girls' expressions on their faces when they get to see their data and get to see what their ball looks like when it's actually moving. And it's an amazing feeling knowing that this technology can help improve girls' talent to another level. So with that being said, I'll hand it back over to Seth, but thank you again for giving us your time. And if I can help answer any questions, any follow-up questions after the webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sydney. So we're going to go through a quick sort of presentation, really quickly going over some of the data points and the technology that we're going to have. Sydney's going to be sharing her screen. So I encourage you to be able to pull that open. It should be taken over your screen right now. And then you can see the presenters as we're talking as well. Again, we will continue to see the chats come into the room, so you can continue to shoot those over our way if you have any questions as we get started. Perfect. So we're going to jump right in to do a quick who are we with basically the company Rapsodo and where we came from into the sports community. So we were founded in 2010 and actually launched our first golf product. That's where a lot of this technology seems to start in a launch monitor space. So we started in the golf world. And we came out with our first product, SkyTrack, which then sort of enabled us to go back into the shop and start building additional products, such as the pitching and the hitting monitor that have been out for a few years now. Really, our focus in what we do, we build data-driven technologies to try to help and empower athletes of all levels. So that's a conscious thing that we do from a price point, from our ability to effectively communicate the data with teams and players and coaches of all levels who may be experienced or the first time they've ever heard of what an RPM or spin efficiency may be. So today we're going to break down a little bit of that information and talk through the data of what those are actually going to look like. The camera technology itself, as we go through kind of how it works, is an optical and radar piece of equipment, and it's a combination of both of those that allow it to work in the way that it does. The radar is going to pick up the ball movement, and it's going to tell our camera also when to start basically taking pictures. We take a lot of photos of the ball as the ball is released and then comes to the player, or comes to the catcher through the strike zone. In that time, we actually identify the ball and the seams of the softball to tell you exactly how it's rotating, the rotation direction, how quickly it moved from point A to point B, and basically all the ball flight parameters that are going to be around that. This sits primarily behind the catcher, so as the pitcher's going to throw, we have a great view, similar to what an umpire would see as the ball is going to come through the strike zone. Just a brief sort of use by and kind of our reach, if you want to call it that, in the industry. We're super excited and proud of everybody that we get to work with, including NFCA. We're going to talk a little bit about what we have in store for the upcoming convention there in Chicago. But you can see across the board we have some great partners and sponsorships with NPF, and a ton of NCAA teams use us, and our advisory panel is littered with some of the coaches, the industry leading coaches, including Coach Lombardi, that really give us insight and feedback that, to the point that when we talk about product development as a company, it truly is a lot of listening and learning. So we try to hear exactly how coaches want to use the tech and the practices, how we can help in any way, shape, or form explain the data in a more efficient manner. So all of that to say that we're excited and really encouraged by this brief, short time that we've really been in the softball community and the acceptance that's already been there across the board. So we're going to continue to build products that are really geared for that marketplace. So what we measure, the data points that are going to be considered there is going to be across the application. You can see kind of on the right side of the screen there. And we'll have additional sort of takeaways that we can hand out there. And also, again, we're going to be in the NFCA convention. We'll have sort of live demos up that you can get and play around with the app during that time. But I'm going to go through each of the data points that will appear basically on the home screen and talk about what those are briefly. We have velocity. That's going to be the ball measured at release as it comes to the plate. We have strike zone placement, so we will give you an actual XY coordinates grids for where that ball was located, which is obviously helpful when you're doing post practice work to understand how many pitches were strikes. Strike zone percentage is based upon pitch type, player, ranking, etc. We have horizontal and vertical break. This is going to be spin-induced break of a pitch, so the more amount of RPMs that are used to create movement for a pitch, that horizontal and vertical movement, that's really kind of the crux of what we call pitch design. I know that Coach and Paige are going to get into that in more detail later, but essentially vertical and horizontal break are the outcome of what sort of spin we're able to put on the ball. We show a 3D ball flight, and we actually do this with two different views, a solid line and a dotted line kind of overlaid on top of each other. The solid line is what the pitch actually did, and the dotted line is what the pitch would have done without that effect of spin, like we mentioned above. Then we get into the spin numbers, and we're going to go into more detail on these in the next slide, so I'm going to briefly talk about these, but we have total spin, spin axis, true spin, and spin efficiency. And for some of you, this may be old hat, you may be familiar with it, but for a lot of our coaches that we find at all levels, so this is not even at certain levels of the game, we'll talk with professional teams and high school teams, and some coaches are just more experienced with the data than others, but we try to make it as easy as it can to understand. So we're going to jump to the next slide and go through what those break down to. Total spin of a pitch is simply the total revolutions that are going to have on a pitch done in revolutions per minute. I know that in the past in the softball community, RPSs, rotation per second, were used. So RPMs is something that we've done and carried over from the industry that we have from the golf product to the baseball product and now into softball. So RPMs basically tell you how many times that ball was rotating inside of a pitch. Spin efficiency is going to be the percentage of true spin over total spin for a pitch, showing how many RPMs were effectively used to create movement of a pitch. When we talk about that, I think it's important to know that true spins and how that breaks down is basically the amount of RPMs, the amount of rotations that actually coordinate with the movement of a pitch. We have three different spin axes, like we have mentioned above, and that's going to be the tilt of the pitch, looking at the face of a clock. So we have this sort of handy little spin axis tool. Those of you that stopped by the booth at NFCA, we're lucky enough to get one last year. We'll probably have some up in Chicago as well. The idea from a spin axis is going to be you have your spin X, which coordinates top and back spin. You have spin Y, which is side spin left and right. And then you have gyro spin, which is spin Z, which is going to be left and right gyro spin. The first two that I mentioned coordinate to true spin. So out of the total RPMs of the pitch, the top spin and back spin is associated for your vertical, negative, and positive movement. Side spin left and right is associated with horizontal movement left and right. Again, so as the ball spins, so will it move. Spin efficiency is talking about how much of the RPMs of that pitch were actually used to create the break. And so spin efficiency is a really important tool. And I know we're going to get into that more with Coach, specifically when we talk about the difference between pitchers and how she kind of coaches and trains different athletes. That's kind of everything that we wanted to cover to give us a basis for discussion for this meeting. I know that there could be an hour-long discussion probably just around the data and helping everybody understand that more. So if you have additional questions, you can please feel free to reach out. And on the next slide, we have kind of our contact information that's going to be listed, so you can reach out to us via email or via phone number, and these slides will also be sent to you after the fact. Sydney, if you could jump to the next slide, that would be great. Perfect. So you can just reach out by call or email during that time. And also, again, we will be providing this deck to you guys, so no worry about jotting this down. You'll have that as access. So all that, we're going to get now into why we're actually here and talk with from this side. So I'm really pleased and honored to be able to introduce Coach Lombardi, obviously with Oregon. We're going to go through some great data today, and she's been a part of really our product development since we launched it into the softball community. So, Coach, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's definitely a pleasure. I'm very excited to be on this advisory board for Rapsodo, and just in the short time that I've been with you all, I've learned so much. I guess just to give some information about myself and how I got involved. I've been coaching at Oklahoma for 21 years. This is my first year at Oregon, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to get started. We've already started, and it's been a good fall, and we are looking forward to the spring. So very excited and happy to be here at Oregon and to be able to use Rapsodo here. I got involved with Rapsodo a couple summers ago. I was at the pitching summit, and Cindy Bristow introduced me to Rapsodo, and at first I was a little overwhelmed. I was excited but a little overwhelmed because there was a lot to see. There was a lot of metrics and all types of measuring going on, and I just was trying to just basically get just a solid understanding of what it actually does, and how it can help me as a coach and how it can help our athletes as well. I'm definitely a pitching coach that likes to take advantage of the science side. I think the more science that you can have behind what you're doing, I think it makes it easier for the athletes to understand and perfect what it is that we're all trying to perfect with them. And it doesn't become a style issue. It becomes more, well, this is science and how science is backing it up, and it simplifies things. Like I said, it was a little intimidating at first, just because there was so much to learn. And so what I really try to do is just kind of take it at little bits at a time. I almost think of Rapsodo as like an onion, and to an onion you have layers that you peel back, and I feel the same thing with Rapsodo. I think it's just really getting a basic understanding of what it does, and then from there you're able to get into it more and more each time. Rapsodo has definitely helped our athletes. I'm excited to be doing this podcast with Paige Parker, because she's one that I got to work a lot with Rapsodo and with Paige Lowry, and I think all of us really got a lot out of it. When I think about what are the most beneficial features of the app, of Rapsodo, I think it all depends with the athlete. I think with both of them, and they would both say that if I instantly brought them in there and just threw everything at them, they would be a little overwhelmed and maybe a little discouraged. So really, one of the first things that we just started doing is, when you look at the screen has so much valuable information. And instead of trying to just really get them to understand every single thing on the screen, we just basically started with spin and the RPMs, the revolutions per minute, and getting them to understand how many that total number is basically how many times the ball is spinning from when they release it to when it gets to the plate. So I would have them throw their different pitches, and even if it was just a fastball that day, just for them to get an idea of just total spin and what that is. And that's how fast the ball is spinning. From there, then it allowed us to start throwing pitches. And when we started throwing pitches, from there we were able to get into true spin. And as Seth said, true spin is the ball actually spinning in the direction that it needs to be spinning. And before Rapsodo, we would be in the bullpens and we'd be throwing different pitches. And a pitcher would throw a rise ball. And the first thing we would all say to the catcher is, did it spin right? Did it spin right? And they'd go, yeah, well, it's kind of like this, but it's kind of coming at me a little bit. Like there wasn't any we couldn't get exact data, basically, as far as whether it's spinning correctly or not. The catcher's trying to see the spin. She's also trying to catch the ball. And so what this did for us is once we started getting into true spin, we didn't have to ask that question anymore, because we could look at now on the monitor total spin, how high is our total spin? And in that number, how much true spin is there? And then from there, another thing that was really neat about the app is that we were able to see a ball and the axis and see, yes, is it spinning completely backwards? Is it a little bit on its side? Are we getting actually more where it's coming right at you? And I'm doing this from a lefty point of perspective. So now they get to see, oh, okay, yes, it is spinning. It is spinning exactly how I want it to spin. Or you know what? It's not. It's a little bit on its side. I'm not getting under it enough. Whatever that may be. So now we just started getting actual factual information after they were throwing the ball versus kind of sort of information. And I think when that happened, it allowed us to be more efficient with our bullpens and not, I guess, maybe speculate whether we're getting the spin that we want. We know after every pitch we throw, 1, what's the total spin? 2, what's the total true spin? So if my total spin, let's say my total spin is, I have one here for Paige that was like 1176 was total spin, and then her true spin was 1138. Well, her spin efficiency on that pitch was 96.8. So she knows, and then seeing the axis, that I'm getting the spin on it, and I should be able to get as much, I should be able to get the movement that I'm wanting to go along with it. So those were the 3 things that we would really just started on. And then as they would come in from there, I would start giving them additional information. As far as now, we can talk more about, let's see, I just had it here. The 3D ball flight, that was something that went a really long way for us, because it allowed them to see, okay, through my pitch from the mound to the plate, and how far, how close is the ball coming to the plate, and then what type of late break that I have. And I'm getting late break maybe 10 feet away from the plate or closer than that. And then on top of that, getting a second break point as well. So that visual for them to see what type of break they have went a long way as well. When I think of player development and, different drills and what, how we went about it, the main thing we did is, you definitely want quantity, so you have a sample size, so you can see what type of consistency you're having with each pitch. Are we able to get the numbers that we want to get on each pitch? Or, if we had 10 curveballs, out of the 10 curveballs, are we getting the true, are we getting a high total spin? Are we getting a great percentage of true spin as well? Or are we kind of hit and miss? Are we the first couple not really getting what I want to get, but towards the end, now I'm starting to understand how to consistently create that spin. So lots of times we'll do it in bits and pieces, and really just kind of focus on one thing. I think if I early on try to get them to focus on a lot of different things, I think would have been too much early on. But I think as we continue to peel back the layers of Rapsodo and them have full understanding, then what would happen is they would start to look to certain numbers for certain pitches, and see, and that kind of went a long way for us. So there's times during the week where we would use this a lot, and there's times where we would use it maybe once a week. It just depended on what we were trying to do and what we were trying to get. But the one thing that I want these athletes to know is when they go on the mound, I want them to know how hard they throw. And I want them to be aware of the type of spin that they can create on the ball. Because if they have that information, I think it'll allow them to go into our games confident and prepared for what we're going to face. Like I said, with the metrics, I get a lot from each metric. I think it's just more depends on the day and what we're going after on that day. So we could have a pen where for that day, we're going to throw 10 of each pitch. And I want to see if you can really increase your total spin, and then how high can your spin efficiency be on that pitch. Or if there's a day where maybe we're developing a pitch and we're trying to just get the correct spin, then we're not really so focused on the spin efficiency and the high number of spin, but we're focused more on the ball access and what that's looking like. And then once we get that access correct, then we can focus on increasing the spin on it. So I think this, and I know Paige will have plenty to say on this, but I think this has gone a long way for our athletes, and really it's just giving them the information that they need. Not just assuming that something's happening, but really getting to see whether it's happening or not, and the type of efficiency that's going along with it.
That's awesome. One of the questions that I had, I know that we kind of had that graphic up that's going to compare the pages, for lack of a better term. And from your perspective as a coach, you maybe couldn't have had two different pitchers that are both so elite, that do two very different things. And I can imagine that can present unique challenges, but also unique opportunities in a game, because different types of hitters are going to have to face pitchers that are completely opposite from each other, and both clearly at an elite level, and that do things very differently. That you can see from a velocity and kind of overpowering standpoint to overpowering from spin, because I think that can be something as well in the movement that's created. I'm sure you already knew well before Rapsodo came along that they're two different pitchers. That's not news. But how did getting this sort of technology into your hands say how different they are, and then did that maybe change how you would work with them on a off season or midweek or whatever sort of bullpen time that you were going to track with Rapsodo?
Well, yes, and they are totally two different pitchers, and they would tell you that as well. And I think that's great that they would tell you that as well, because I want Paige Parker to pitch like Paige Parker and do what she does best. And that's creating as much spin as she possibly can on the ball, and throwing at a lower velo. I want Paige Lowry to do the total opposite. Paige Lowry is a power pitcher. Her goal is to get between 70 and 73 on a consistent basis and try to top out, a couple numbers higher. With her movement is gonna, her spin, she's not gonna have as much spin as Paige Parker. So when they use the Rapsodo, they are gonna use it to what's gonna help them be the best, not try to be like each other. So when they come in and we would use Rapsodo, I wanted them to understand that right from the start. This is an individual thing that you're working on. It's not trying to do what the other can do. So you'd see with Paige Lowry, she's looking at ball access. She's looking at increasing her total spin as much as she can, and obviously for both of them to have true spin to go along with it, because the more that higher number of total spin and then to have that high percentage of true spin, that's what's going to allow our ball to move. So what was good is if they're seeing that true spin was low, then that ball's not coming off their fingers the way that they want it to. So what it would do is just give them instant feedback. And what they were able, I would say both of them were able to do, is when they got a ball off really well and they got the numbers that they wanted, one of the first things I would ask them is, what did that feel like? And they'd say, what I felt on this particular pitch, I really felt a lot of pressure on my index finger on this pitch more than I felt on everything else. Or I felt the pressure from my middle finger, or there was something big that happened that allowed them to get the number that they wanted, and that allowed them to get specific of what it was hand-wise that they did to make a difference. Where sometimes, you'll throw a pitch and you could throw a pitch and it feels good. You throw a next pitch, it feels similar. But by having these numbers, you're going, wait a minute, that pitch was totally different than the pitch before. So why was it? What was the feel? So we would start to correlate the feel with the higher numbers that they were both getting. And that went a long way for us.
Great. And I think you made such a good point, too, that just because the numbers are going to be different, there's still kind of that designed outcome that you want for both sides. There's numbers that are there for both. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be the same, but there are, from a pitch design standpoint, you have, just from one fastball to the next or one changeup to the next, there's a number there that you're looking to get from each in order to create kind of the desired outcome that you want to have.
Yeah, I want to push them as individuals, to push them to be great with their individual numbers. This is a perfect example, with Rapsodo, what's great is you get the miles per hour, which is awesome. That's one thing. When we're at practice, I always have the radar on, always. And lots of times pitchers don't like to have the radar on because it's easier to say, no, I throw so much harder. But when you have the radar on, it gives you an idea of where you're at every day. And I want you to be able to feel where you're at every day. And so with Paige Lowry and her being a power pitcher, that miles per hour on the Rapsodo is going to be huge for her, because she knows that she wants to be at a certain number. In the same sense, for Paige Parker, she creates a lot of spin on her ball. She also knows that if she gets to a number that's actually too high miles per hour, then she sees her spin actually go down a little bit. So I think there's different numbers, different things that they both go to on the Rapsodo that is specific and makes it individual for each one of them.
Cool, very interesting. One of the questions that came in, I think, was a little bit more about the sort of feature set, but I wanted to specifically ask you about it, and it was about video. That obviously, video is something I didn't cover, the part of the application. And then you mentioned something when you were talking about the kind of pairing the physical, what they felt with actual outcome, and how the video can kind of help pair into that. I wondered if you guys, took advantage of that as well.
Yeah, and God, goodness, that's probably one of the first things I would have brought up. I just was kind of getting caught up in the numbers. The video is amazing. The video is unbelievable. The slow-mo that goes with it. Lots of times when you're doing video, you have certain, what's the word for it? Like when you slow it down and it almost like you're getting ready to go into release, and then you go to the next, you slow it down more and you miss the release. I can't think of it. It's the video allows you to see from the start to the finish every single point in the motion. So when they would throw, say they threw a really good one and they got good numbers, we videoed every pitch as well. And so we would get the data that we needed, but then also we would go back to the video and get to see hand placement. So if I'm throwing my rise ball, where's my hand placement? Is it under the ball? Is it behind the ball? What, is the ball falling off my finger? What is it doing? So the video is excellent quality. So it allows you to see the pitch from the very beginning to the very end. And that went a really long way, because that gave us instant feedback, because we're looking at the numbers and going, that was an unbelievable number. And we have the data to see it, but now we want to see what it actually looked like.
Awesome. Another question that actually came in was regarding some of the data, and you had mentioned it earlier with knowing when late break appeared and what that looked like throughout the ball flight. Something that I didn't touch on from kind of the app overview is going to be on the 3D ball flight, the movement metrics that show when that appeared. Wondered, obviously that's something, you mentioned, so you guys take advantage of that. If you could kind of go into a brief kind of overview of what that is and how you guys use that.
Definitely, and I like the view that's overhead, where you can see the pitcher to the plate. What I like about that is it shows, ultimately, every time these guys throw a pitch, whether it's a rise, drop, curve, screw, change, we want every pitch to look the same. So when it's coming into the zone, when the ball's coming into the zone, it's hard. We want to distort the hitter's timing. We also want to distort their idea of what they think is coming in. It's actually something else. So not only do we want to create high numbers, but we want to try to create tunnels with our pitches. So if I threw a drop in and then the next pitch I threw a changeup in, I want those two balls, if I had one ball and I had the other, as they're coming in, I want them to be as close as possible to the plate. And then from there, the drop ball is going to drop in hard. The changeup is going to come in soft. And what I liked with the 3D ball flight is it allows our pitchers to see how much late break that they are getting to the plate. The later break that we can get to the plate, we're going to have stronger tunnels. Where if instantly the balls break, they release the ball and you're getting to the halfway point and you can already see a major difference from drop to rise to another pitch, then we're not distorting the hitter's view of the pitch. We're making it very clear that this is what one pitch looks like, this is what another pitch looks like. And so what we want to try to do ultimately is see how close we can get the ball to the plate and then create late break and create confusion. So I like that ball flight because it gives us precise how far the ball gets to the plate when it has its first break, and then is there opportunity for it to have an additional break. And that's something that I know went a long way with them. They really like that.
Awesome. And what Coach is kind of referring to on the 3D ball flight, you have kind of station views you can see from a catcher's point of view, so you can see the ball come in. And again, the dotted line versus the solid line to what would have happened versus what actually did. And that same thing is true then on a side view and a top view. And those two things are going to show us, the side view is going to show us the difference in vertical movement between the two. So if there was a pitch with a lot of top or back spin, you'll see that separation there. And if you do the top view, that's going to show us the separation between the horizontal movement of a pitch. So if there's a lot of kind of side spin to a pitch, left or right, you'll see it kind of deviate from the other one during that time. And then break markers are shown to actually, calculate when that break first started appearing and when a significant amount did as well. I think the sort of keys that's going to be coming and hopefully will be there, and this is going to be new for everybody that we can kind of shout out, is the application is going to be getting a little bit of a upgrade facelift coming soon, where multiple pitches and pitch types can actually be overlaid on top of each other in a 3D view directly from the app to see drop ball, rise ball, change up, and you can actually see where they're going to come in and how they part and move during that. So we're really excited about that, and that's going to be up and running hopefully by NFCA, but for sure for the beginning of the year. So something to look forward to there, I guess. We had one last question that came in. This is a little bit more of a question regarding the bullpen report and what we're actually going to show from a strike percentage. And this is something that was corrected not too long ago. So this may be from an actual user. And they asked, there was a ball that was on the line that was not necessarily inside of the strike zone on the strike grid that was shown. And it was not going to be calculated as a strike because it wasn't technically inside the strike zone. We've now expanded the strike zone from being 17 inches wide. We're actually going to include the width of the ball on each side to say if a ball is going to be considered a strike or not, if any part of it passed over what were, the imaginary strike zone that's going to be created there. So that actually is included and considered to be a strike. Now, if it has sort of 3.5 inches, on either side or whatever that looks like, in addition to the 17 inches of the plate that'll be there. So great question. My guess is that may have came in from a user, so we appreciate it during that. Coach, anything else before we kind of wrap up this part of the segment? I know we're going to switch over to Paige here in a minute, and then we'll continue to have questions as they come in, but want to give you the opportunity to say anything else before we move over.
Yeah, I think Rapsodo is a great tool, and it's given us a lot of good, valuable information. I think really just being able to educate your pitchers and getting them to understand that I want to get as much total spin as possible, but the true spin, the spin efficiency and the higher efficiency that I can get with my spin, that's when they're going to really see what type of break and how sharp their break can be on the pitches. So those are the things that that spin efficiency I think is huge for them, understanding the higher that efficiency, now I can get the ball not just to kind of move, but to really move. And I think just not overwhelming. This was a process for us as we kept going. We started out small and then we got a little bigger with it. And I think as we got bigger with it, it was just easy. I think Paige would tell you she could look at the entire screen and go, okay, and get what she needed for that pitch and move on. But I think that the spin efficiency, as a pitcher, you want to be able to understand how to make the ball move. And I think this is a great tool to help you do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Coach. Really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So we're going to continue to move forward, and then something that may be a little ironic, and I think is such a treat, especially for the people that are coming in and viewing. We get to have the coach perspective and the player perspective, but not only that, someone who actually was coached by the coach, which is a unique thing that we get to bring on here. So we're going to continue to go, and I'm really pleased to be able to welcome Rapsodo's own athlete, Paige Parker, to the presentation as well, and kind of get her feedback and maybe ask some of the similar questions. We're starting to get some more questions coming in, and we're definitely going to continue to ask those. I just encourage people to continue asking. We had another person ask for a sample of those break markers when we looked at top view, side view. We'll definitely be able to follow up with those afterwards, and we can bring those into the presentation and basically email those out with the help of the wonderful people within the NFCA. We can follow up with those images as well. So we will do that. We don't have that baked into this presentation, but easy for us to get. And then also, if anybody ever wants a webinar one-on-one to actually go over the application, we're happy to do that with you guys as well. So Paige, welcome, and we're really excited to have you on.
Thank you so much, Seth. First, thank you to Rapsodo for bringing me in for today. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you to NFCA for putting this webinar on. I think it's awesome that we are able to reach a lot of people to show them what Rapsodo is all about. So, you know, growing up, I was a pitcher who was really focused more on how much movement I could get on the ball, how much spin I could get, and there was really never anything that allowed me to see whether or not, you know, that was correct or, you know, my true results that I was getting. And so whenever I was introduced to Rapsodo in college with Coach Lombardi, I was able to finally get the results that I was looking for and to finally get the things that I was more interested in as a pitcher. And so I was so excited, you know, after my collegiate career was over to be able to be introduced or to be able to be on the Rapsodo team. And so just thrilled to be a part of it and to be a part of the great technology that Rapsodo brings. And so I'm just really excited to be here. You know, I have a unique perspective as an athlete as well as a coach as well. I am working with a lot of youth pitchers right now, and I have been introducing Rapsodo into their workouts and that kind of thing as well. So I kind of have a unique perspective from both sides. And, you know, as a pitcher who really focuses in on spin, Rapsodo was the perfect tool for me to be able to get immediate feedback. And I think that's the best thing that I've had from Rapsodo is being able to get that immediate feedback that I was searching for. And now it's allowing me to teach my younger girls, you know, the difference of spin and having them to be able to understand it as well. And so I think that, you know, whenever I was using it, and I still use it as an athlete, you know, being able to use it in various different ways, kind of like what Coach Lombardi was speaking on with being able to kind of focus in on different things. And so for me, what I really would look at as an athlete was the spin axis and understanding, you know, let's say I was working on my curveball for that day, right? So I would look at this axis up and down and, you know, being able to see my results. I wanted this result, but sometimes maybe I was getting a little bit where my axis was here or my axis was a little bit tilted, and being able to look at a screen and see that result and then being able to make that adjustment as quickly as I could. And I think that's something that's really important, you know, with the older girls that I work with, having them go kind of pitch by pitch and saying, so here's your result. What can we do to make that adjustment? And it's been really great for them. And I've had a lot of success with, you know, my older students, like high school age girls, being able to make instant adjustments. Now, whenever I use it with my younger pitchers, it's more about educating them and educating them in a way that, you know, this is what this pitch is supposed to look like. And we're going to work really hard on developing this pitch to being able to see what that looks like. And so, you know, with my younger girls, we have to break it down a little bit more and kind of go on a larger scale rather than getting so specific with them. But it's important that it works for each age group. And so, you know, the older girls, they already kind of have an understanding of what the ball should look like and how the ball should be spinning. But with the younger girls, it's about, you know, educating them. So it's great to know that you can use it at a very, very high level. And then you can use this technology with girls who are, very young, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, who are just learning how to pitch and understanding their results as well. Developing, being able to develop each pitch by pitch is something that's awesome to be able to really focus in on what you're doing. And, just that immediate feedback that you get, it's awesome. And so Rapsodo has been something that has really changed the way I have been able to pitch, and it's really changed a lot for all of the younger girls that I am teaching on a daily basis, and having them have a better understanding of what they're doing as well. And so for me, like I kind of mentioned, the most beneficial feature that I think was kind of what Coach Lombardi was touching on was with the true spin and the spin axis, and understanding how looking at that true spin, is my ball really breaking in the way that I want it to, versus, oh, I have this much spin, but it's really about, is that spin correct or not? So I've been really able to touch on a lot of those features, and then start off basic, as Coach Lombardi was saying, with starting off and just looking at a few different features, and then really diving in and understanding everything else as well. So,
great. And Paige, sorry to cut you off, but we actually had somebody ask a question that was around something similar to what you're talking about, mentioning giving feedback. And it's also great that you get to have that, the user experience point of view of being the coach and the player. And I've been to the facility and met with your dad when he was doing lessons and doing that as well. So another, example of somebody getting to learn the data, using it, and then transitioning it into a tool to actually help and train with. And one of the questions was, do you have the ability to send players feedback, not just in real time? And I know the two things that come to my mind are you can actually put in notes on a specific pitch, and that can be tagged to that note. And then you can also send like the bullpen report, which I know that, Coach was actually referencing some of the data points from a bullpen report, probably from her time with you as well. So during that, wondered if that's something that you guys took advantage of when you trained or when you were a player as well.
For sure. I know for me, with my athletes that I work with, we do look at the pitches as we're doing them, but I can also, after we're done with our session, you can go in as like the coach and go in and look at their bullpen report. And I'm actually able to, download that right to my computer and then send it to the parent. One thing that I also will do quite a bit is I will actually go in and look at their bullpen report, and I will send that, but I will also send like a typed kind of evaluation, or, this is what I saw from your this specific bullpen, and this is what we need to work on. And so just kind of giving them a little bit more insight from my personal, like what I looked at. So it's very easy to give your players that information for them to be able to look at. It's very easy. It's easy as, sending an email, or being able to go in on each specific pitch and type or add those notes in. So it's very, very easy to have access to those reports and have access to those specific bullpens that you were doing.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. And kind of touching on the video as well. I use the video feature all the time, and being able to, show and being able to look at the slow-mo video myself, and then being able to show the slow-mo video to younger athletes is really awesome, because I can pinpoint and say, hey, this is what that pitch looked like. That's why it didn't move quite how we wanted it to, and this is what we can do to kind of fix that. So the video feature is amazing, and the slow-mo feature is really, really great as well.
Awesome. Cool. So someone going to your specific playing days, now that that's still obviously upon us, but also the questions that came back in, some of the new things, I guess, that we're looking to do is try to help coaches and players, not just with an immediate feedback, but also understand maybe their entire sort of repertoire or arsenal of pitches, and really build that around you. So you being a person who's known to have that, elite movement coming from spin, and what that looks like. I know that we've talked about how you can create a bigger amount of deception. That's what Coach mentioned, as a tool that you can use as a part of that. So can you just kind of go over what you've done specifically around that to say how much movement can I create? Do you think about that when you're thinking about your different pitch types and how they move off of each other, and even something like pitch sequencing, once you get through a game to say, I know this pitch is going to have separation in a specific way, and this is how I can use that more effectively.
For sure. I think that's something that I focused on immensely as a pitcher, is being able to create a lot of deception by making each pitch look as similar to one another coming out of my hand, and then for them to break differently. And so you can kind of see in this movement matrix here that a lot of my pitches, if you look at like my changeup and my rise ball, they are, the most similar to one another movement wise, but being able to throw those and they look similar, but being able to change speeds on them, or, having my drop ball and my rise ball come in close to the same plane and one go up and one go down. Mm-hmm. Or I think for me, I threw a lot of curve and rise. And so having those two pitches come out of my hand the same way, and then for one to break up and one to break the other way, was something that I focused on quite a bit. And having Rapsodo being able to show me those different things was awesome. And I think just having an understanding of what your hand is doing each and every pitch is something that's great. And we were able to get that off of video, and we were able to get that off of just the spin access and the various tools that we had available to us through Rapsodo was something that was great for me, being able to create as much deception as possible, rather than, focusing on just, is my pitch moving the right way? It was more focusing on, do my pitches look similar to one another whenever they're coming out of my hand, and how much movement can I get coming off of that kind of that same tunnel that Coach Lombardi was talking about.
Sure. And to kind of, for everybody who's seen this screen, to kind of give a quick overview of what this is, what we call a movement matrix. So when I mentioned some of the new things coming out with tunneling, this is one of those elements. And Paige, unbeknownst to her, really just highlighted all three elements of that we have coming out. So it's a great kind of intro. This is what we call a movement matrix. We also have the velocity matrix, and then also the release matrix as the ball coming out of your hand with that. And the idea is simply the tunneling, that we want to create as much amount of movement as possible out of the smallest amount of movement as possible from a release. So we want a really tight grouping of release as the ball is being released out of your hand, so the batter's not going to be able to pick that up. It would be a little bit like tipping a pitch for Paige to create that amount of movement between her rise ball and her curve ball, if she all of a sudden dramatically changed how the ball came out of her hand or mechanics from her pitch in order to create that movement. And then finally, the velocity matrix, what Paige was alluding to with the rise ball and the changeup, and how close those guys are together. If we can map those guys to have the similar sort of movement for each one, but then have that deception baked in, that one is 10 mile an hour slower than the other, then again, from a hitter's point of view, he thinks it's the same, she thinks it would be the same sort of hit or pitch ball that's going to be coming through them, and then all of a sudden their timing is going to be off. So those are ways that we try to do that. What we were specifically looking at on the movement matrix is a breakdown between three different women's pitches, and Paige obviously being the largest, and the other two just showing examples of what still elite level pitchers have, and how exceptional Paige's movement is to be able to create. These are really good pitchers that we also have up there hidden with player A and player B, so that we don't look negatively. But I just wanted to stress that that's not unusual when we look at a lot of even collegiate and professional softball pitchers, that their movement matrix is not very big, because a lot of their spin is going to be gyro spin. We see that in a lot of pitches, that when we looked at the chart that Coach Lombardi had, basically detailing between the two of how much spin efficiency was there. You saw a lot of lower spin efficiencies for Paige Lowry, and those numbers are probably even higher than a lot of the other girls that were on the team. So those are not negative numbers in any way. It's just impressive across the board to create that amount of movement. So that's something just to keep in mind as we look through these numbers in general. Cool. We had a couple questions that came through that are going to be a little bit more geared to subscriptions and pricing. I'll try to do that once we wrap up our presentation time, and that we're going to be doing this with Paige during this. And I know that Sydney also has been working on trying to bring up just a view of basically a screenshot of what the UI is going to look like again, just so we can kind of call and highlight that out, just so all the viewers can be able to see what that looks like. And Paige, while she's pulling that up, I had a question of, as you as a coach, and you're looking at this sort of data, was there something at the beginning? Well, we always tell our coaches and players just kind of get a baseline. I liked what Coach said. We didn't try to look at every data point on there. It was, let's just let the girl throw, and let's see kind of what numbers come, and then they're going to kind of tell a story of what they're doing mechanically, what they're naturally good at. Some girls are able to spin it more than others. Some girls can throw it harder than others. Not to say we can't work on both, but there's going to be sort of natural elements there. Is that sort of a similar case that you take?
For sure. Whenever I started to work with younger girls, I had a whole week where I dedicated just like some baseline testing with them. And so we could all kind of, me as the coach and them as the player, kind of get an idea of where they were at. And really, I didn't focus on every single piece of data that we were looking at. I think specifically, I focused a lot with them on their spin axis, and a lot with what you were talking about is how we see a lot of that gyro spin, or that kind of like that bullet spin. Mm-hmm. And we saw that quite a bit with the younger athletes. And so just kind of showing them those results, and then having them understand, I'm not getting really the most spin that I could possibly be getting. And so just kind of breaking it down, starting off with them very, very basic, and having them, kind of get an idea of them. This girl, she may be more of a power type pitcher, or, this girl has a really great understanding of spin. And for me to be able to go off of that and understand what their where their needs are, and being able to take that information and help them to the best of my ability with what they're good at. Obviously still helping with some of their, weaker spots, but really being able to hone in on, what they do well already, what some of their tendencies may be, and how to help them in the best way possible. Great.
And one thing, go ahead. No, go ahead, Coach.
I wanted to add to that too. I think something that's, I've worked with pitchers too that have really, really good screwballs. Well, that spin lots of times is going to be closer to that gyro spin. Mm-hmm. So when we were working on that, we didn't even look at spin efficiency. We looked more about total spin and how much spin we can create on the ball. So I think that's another thing, is just understanding there's certain pitches that we would look to certain metrics for, just to add.
No, I think that's perfect. That's actually what I was going to chime in on. We have this sort of spin axis tool, and we're talking about the gyro spin, bullet spin, rifle spin, a lot of different terms for the same thing, to say when the spin axis is going to be pointed directly at the way that the ball's traveling. As the ball's coming into the hitter, the spin working around it, like that. When we say pitch design, that's a term that's really kind of come up a lot with Rapsodo in the industry. What we really are trying to stress is that for each pitch, there's a desired outcome, and Coach, you hit the nail on the head there, that for this particular pitch, the idea of spin efficiency may be to be as low as possible. It's not a grading scale out of 100 that we're trying to reach each time. There's going to be a perfect sort of element. So there's certain pitches that maybe the ideal outcome for spin efficiency is going to be in the low single digits, and then all of a sudden the ball is going to come in. If it truly is spinning like this, gravity will take a hold and it will drop, and it will create that sort of pitch and desired effect. So there's a lot of different ways as we think about, even as we turn the spin axis, perfect gyrospin. As we start just a few degrees to tilt it up, all of a sudden now we're adding in side spin to the pitch, almost to the point that it could be 100% side spin, which is also 100% spin efficient. And that ball can just be rotated around this way too. So we're not talking about much sort of changes from a girl throwing a certain pitch type and then all of a sudden it's not drastic movements. It's, can we change it 10 degrees? And then all of a sudden that's going to add in an additional element of movement. And when we're talking about missing barrels, which is the idea behind all of this, it's only a few inches that we had to affect change. And a few inches can be created, you know, especially looking at Paige's movements, how much total spin she's able to create with the ball. A few inches can be done just by making it more spin efficient than what it was, or less, if that's the desired outcome. So that's awesome. That's good. Good points. We're pretty much to the hour time. This has been fantastic on our part. I know I've learned a lot. I hope that you guys have as well. There are some questions we did not get to. We're going to follow up with each of you individually. There's some questions about pricing. The monitors themselves, the pitching version is $3,000, and the hitting version, which we didn't go over, but maybe there'll be another webinar around the hitting version, is $4,000, and those guys come with the ability to do everything that we had talked about here. There was also a question somebody had alluded to us transitioning to the ground pitching unit, and that is definitely true. That we're actually getting rid of the tripod and transitioning into ground pitching, which will essentially, it's going to be the exact same monitor for those of you that are users out there. So that's the exciting part. We're not selling a new monitor with that. It's literally an upgrade to transition down and start gathering release information as well. So probably another webinar to follow with more release information, talking about how we can start learning and training from that. And again, want to call out, Sydney, if you could please pull up the last slide on the presentation. There's an event that we're going to be at for NFCA that we're really excited about. It's the Advanced Analysis of Pitching, and that's going to be 402A, and that's going to be with a great panel with Lori Sipple, Larissa Anderson, and Sydney Bristow are going to be involved there with some demos with that going on. So would really encourage and love to see everybody out there as well. From everybody at Rapsodo, Sydney and myself, thank you. A big special thank you, obviously, to Coach and Paige for being a part of this. We really appreciated it. And everybody over at NFCA has been wonderful to work with getting this set up, and we look forward to the convention. Perfect. There you go, Sydney. Thank you very much. Ladies with NFCA, anything that we need to say to wrap up?
I think we're good, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. It was a successful venture, I think, for the first one, and thrilled to have everybody at Rapsodo, Coach Lombardi, and Paige on board. Thank you all very much. And for those of you watching, be ready for the next one. And if you have subject ideas, make sure you get those to us via social media or through education@nfca.org. It's been our pleasure. Have a great rest of your week and throughout the rest of the fall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this webinar. If you're a member, stay tuned for more coming up soon. If you're not a member, we invite you to go to nfca.org and check out all our member benefits.